Tonight's guest is a painter whose works pairs the qualities of clair-obscur with the softness of Eugène Carrier. He believes an eternal mindset is vital to avoid reflecting your time, and the solution he proposes is to study the ancient Chinese philosophy of Daoism. Cheng Wu,
hello.
Welcome to the Cave of Palace.
Hello, thank you.
So tonight we'll be looking at the, to me, somewhat strange position of figurative painting in China today. And but our main focus will be to unearth some surprising similarities, but also differences between Chinese and Western classical painting. And we'll look at how not trying might be better than trying, and how egocentrism might be what hinders your pursuit of a higher goal. But before we get to that, tell us what happened on your way here, because this painting was not supposed to hang here.
Yeah, I think that I'm probably the first one to brought the bad example here, because this painting is not that good. And the finished one was stolen during my flight too. Also,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so sad. I mean, I know Bork Nerdrum was very fond of that.
Yes, I mean, he had told me that that was one of the best portrait he have ever seen.
That's so strange, but you took it in the luggage.
Yes, it was in the suitcase. And then when I arrived in Oslo, and I was told that your suitcase is delayed. And the next day, someone delivered the suitcase to me in Oslo. Then and I opened it, and it's gone.
So someone opened it, took it out, and then...
I think so, yeah.
My God. But why didn't you send it, or why didn't you...
Yes, I did. I reported.
Yeah.
Yeah. I called the agency in Hong Kong, but I don't know. They didn't reply me yet. Right.
But why didn't you take it on the plane?
Because if the last time I did it, and they think that there's some... I was trying to smuggle a painting. Then they returned my painting for over 2 weeks, I think.
Where was this?
It was in Japan.
They thought it was an old master...
Yes, I don't know. They just maybe some antiques painting, I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's not strange, because when I remember the first portrait that I saw that you had made, the one of Andreas, which was an amazing experience to me. I mean, it's that's why I also mentioned Eugène Carrier in the introduction here, because you have this amazing ability to have the whole form, and then you subdue all the face within that form. The eyes are not drawn; it's not too harsh. A lot of painters, I think, can do that, but you have this very soft quality. Have you been looking at Carrier?
Sure. That's how Carrier did it.
Yeah.
So I just tried to do the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And the first time I saw Carrier's painting, it was like 7 years ago in France, in Strasbourg, and it was in Musée des Beaux-Arts. There was a lot of masterpieces there.
Yeah.
And when I saw Carrier's painting, I was shocked.
Right.
Yeah, but now they are putting them down. You couldn't see those paintings in that museum now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But before you got to Strasbourg, you were also educated within painting in China.
Yes, it's a high school. It's a high school actually, and we spent a lot of time in doing classical figurative painting and drawings. I mean, we learning the system of I think it was created by those Soviet people. The Ilya Repin is our role model.
Ilya Repin, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, you were not told to do modern things or conceptual or anything.
Of course not.
No. Of course not. It's not of course to me.
Because if you try to improve yourself, if you try to get better, you have to learn from the masters.
Right.
That's logical to me, of course.
Yeah. Well, it should be logical.
Yes.
But, I mean, my point is that whenever I meet figurative painters from at least Western countries, as I say, at best they don't really learn anything, and they're always pushed to do conceptual things or so-called modern things.
Yeah, I made the same situation when I was in France. Yeah.
Okay. How was that for you? That must have been a shock for you.
Because I graduated from high school, then I wanted to go to Europe because there's a lot of amazing thing here. You can see Rembrandt, Da Vinci. So I came here.
Yeah.
Then I applied for the Academy des Beaux-Arts in Strasbourg, and I was shocked again because they told me that, the thing that you are doing is too classical.
Yeah.
This is not art.
Right.
It shocked me because in my I didn't know anything about kitsch. I thought painting is art.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was so shocked. So then I stopped studying that place, and I just travel to different museums to see old master painting.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you basically studied by yourself?
Yes.
Right. And okay, but there was another experience that might have been on one of your journeys then, in the Louvre.
Yes. That was the second day when I got to France, and I went to the Louvre.
Right.
And I see the very small painting by Vermeer. It's called Astronaut.
Astronomer.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Astronomer.
Yes, astronauts go into space.
I'm sorry. And it was amazing. It was so small.
Yeah.
It was so small and amazing because I'm from China.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have the same cultural background as Mr. Vermeer did, and we are so far away. When I look at it, it was so amazing. It shocked me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you could relate to it without problems.
Yes, and I don't need any explanation there.
Right.
Because when you go to the Modern Art Museum, when you see those big things going on there, and you see a lot of explanation there.
Right. Yeah. Accompanying text. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that was why you were not interested also in contemporary art. You didn't have any lust to go in that direction.
No, I don't want to because, well, I don't like it.
Yeah.
That's all, and I don't want to lie to myself. I don't want to force myself to do it. I don't want to do it for anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But okay, so to give us an understanding of what you're generally interested in, is it mostly portraits that you do?
Yeah, but because I think composition is too hard for me. For instance, I will try later, but for instance, I think I'm a beginner. I'm still a beginner. I want to do better and better.
Right.
So that's why I'm now focusing on portraits.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that I'm not good enough.
But you're interested in creating a narrative or making a composition? Or?
Yes, I will, but not now, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are there any other sources of inspiration for you when it comes to painters? But Vermeer, Carrière?
Rembrandt, of course. He's one of the best painters in history.
Right.
Yeah. He could paint so many details at the same time, without destroying the whole.
Right.
Yes. It's amazing.
Right. But that, as far as I know, Chinese painting, Rembrandt is quite different. Am I wrong?
Well, it depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think they both study from the nature.
Right.
That's the key point.
Right.
Yes.
Right, and we'll get to that. Talking about Daoism, which has been a fascinating thing. I knew virtually nothing about it before we agreed to do this conversation. But we'll wait a bit when it comes to that, because you sent me some images of painters that are favored today in China.
Yeah.
And they were, speaking of what you said in the beginning, they were heroic multi-figures.
Yes.
With the flag,
Yeah,
Chinese
yeah.
flag, and very reminiscent of typical Soviet
Yes,
type of
exactly.
painting. I was mind blown the first time you talked to me about the situation for figurative painters in China. You have to explain what's going on.
Well, we have great respect for those figurative painters in China today.
Right.
And they are still playing the main role in China.
They're
And-
still the first violinists.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course, and they are supported by the government, and they, yes, they do. They are supported by the government, and they have.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
They have
This
free
reminds me of
studio, and they have free houses to work in.
free.
Yes, free. I mean, the government pay for it.
If this was not too idiosyncratic, I would start talking about this Norwegian children's song, which is about the country where everything is backwards.
Yes, yeah, that's how I feel when I come here. I was so surprised.
Well, you're backwards. China is backwards. I mean, for me, yeah.
Yeah, for me, you were back.
Well, that's better. I
Yes.
agree. That's much better. Okay, sorry. But so, as a figurative painter in China, you can actually make money, and
Of course, they make a lot of money. A lot, really a lot. Well, I shouldn't say that, but they are very rich,
that's amazing. And that's what you hear about.
and they are most of them. I mean, those big figures. They are mostly those professors in art academy. Yeah, because we are still having the traditional paintings in art academy now.
Wow.
You know, you could choose to be a modern artist. You could choose to be a figurative painter.
Yeah.
It's your choice.
Right.
They have them both.
So, what you're describing is a much freer situation.
Yes, I think so.
I think I'll be probably moving to China quite
Yeah,
soon.
You should.
I can't be that difficult to learn a language.
Yeah.
No, okay. So tell us more about what kind of influence do these figurative painters have? What are the possibilities for them? I mean, you mentioned some kind of a community that was.
Yes, they have
Yeah.
built community for painters. For example, there's a very good painter called Yang Feiyun. He's a big figure in China, and he built a very big community in Beijing. I mean, they have building that's for teaching. They have model every day, so the student could just paint from life. And for those teachers, I mean, for those painters, they will have their own house and studio. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yes.
But I mean, in Beijing.
Yes, in Beijing.
And but community, how does this work? I mean, he made the house, or what's going on?
Well, from what I know, the government gave him the place, I mean the land, and he built everything, and he even built a museum inside the community. It's a big museum. It's very good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they will exhibit their works there, and they will have maybe some painters from Europe to exhibit in that museum too.
I mean, all the contemporary artists in China should move to the West, and all the classical figuratives in the West should go to China.
I think so, because the modern art is not that supported by the government in China.
Yeah, but is it worked against?
Well, they don't have any comment about that. They
Right.
just let it burn or something. Yeah, they. I think the modern art in China is supported by the Western. Yes.
Western states.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah, they sells a lot of things though.
That's amazing.
They're supporting modern artists in China. I mean, most of them are from the West.
Yeah.
Or people from Hong Kong, something like that.
Right.
Not from the mainland China.
But this, like this community you're describing.
Yes.
Are there several of them around in different places in China? I mean, are
yes,
there many
they
painters?
Do. They have community like that. That like what I was talking about in Wuhan, in Shanghai, in Guangzhou, and several cities.
Right.
They're all supported by the government.
But this was okay. So it was given by the government. This place you mentioned in Beijing. But this painter spent his own money.
No,
that was built by the government.
Yes,
that's amazing.
Yeah, they mostly pay for everything. Some painters even don't have to pay for their art supplies. I mean, the government will pay for it. You could apply for it. But you have to do some propaganda works for the government.
Right.
Yeah, for example, you have to make some big composition about how the communists won the civil war.
Right.
For example, yeah.
Right.
Something like that.
Or portrait commissions and stuff like that.
Maybe.
Right. So I'm getting interested. Are there any other benefits?
Well, I think they're getting enough.
Okay. Now, what is also fascinating is that you told me, and this might be connected with what you're describing. You told me that you didn't have in Chinese a word for art until like 100 years ago.
Yes. They don't have a word for art like until I think 19th centuries.
Yeah.
That it's come from the West, of course.
Right.
Before that, we only have paintings, sculpture, and calligraphy or something like that.
You would define them by the name of the discipline.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, this is this is how it was in Europe in the 15th century, 16th century, in that period. You would just say painting or sculpture or whatever. But I read, preparing for this conversation, on your suggestion, I read this, The Path of Beauty. And he does mention something about not having the word art. But there was another word, and I'll not try to say it in Chinese, which covers painting and sculpture, but also food and other things, and it just means that which gives you pleasure. I don't remember the exact word, but his point was that there was
美术, it's probably 美术.
Okay.
Yeah, 美术. It's if you translate it, I mean literally translated to English, is beauty and crafting.
Beauty and crafting?
Yes, 美术.
Okay.
There's two characters. Two Chinese characters. The first one means beauty, and the second one means crafting.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
That's the word you were talking about.
And so, okay, but with the word art, you didn't get the word kitsch.
No, until this year, I think. Yeah, now we have it now.
Now, what is kitsch in Chinese then?
客气.
客气?
Yes.
Yeah.
It means harsh and strange.
Harsh and strange.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, and just this year you got that word.
Yeah, just this year. Before I've tried to Google it.
Yeah.
I mean, translate it on Google, but I couldn't find any.
Right.
No.
Okay, well, we'll see how these things develop and what it will be used for. I mean, have you read anything written about kitsch in Chinese now? Is it becoming something?
Well, they have words for it, and they have something written by Greenberg, the critics.
Right.
Yes, I think that the word kitsch is from that article that Greenberg was written. Yes.
Okay. So it's not. So it has the exact same connotation, more or less, as it does in the West.
Yes.
Right.
It was translated into Chinese. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So because in the West, of course, this was used as an attack on the classical old master culture. And I was thinking, and that's a nice segue into starting to talk about classical Chinese painting, and give us a little overview over the greatest period in Chinese painting.
It's around thousands.
Around the year 1000.
Yeah, it's around the year of thousands, and it was Dynasty Song.
Song, yeah.
Yes, and it was. For example, Li Cheng is from that period, and he's one of the best painters in history.
Right.
Yeah, and at that time, painters are mostly influenced by the ideas of Tao.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we talk about, we'll get to that, but if we talk about specifically the technique that they used, what was how did they paint? What did they paint on?
It depends. They paint on papers or silk.
Silk.
Some fabric made of silk.
Yeah.
And they use ink and brush.
Right.
Chinese brush is kind of something very different. It's something very different.
Right.
I think it's very soft. Yeah.
Right. And it strikes me when I'm reading this book, The Path of Beauty, and looking at Li Cheng's work. I mean, this is I think it's called a solitary temple, and it struck me looking into it that there are strong similarities between what he was doing and what you could find in classical Western painting. I mean, when I look at him, he has the same kind of atmosphere as you find, for example, in Leonardo.
Yeah, sure. And I found that it's extremely similar to the painters called Hedwig.
Hedwig, yes.
Yes. If you look at how he painted the trees, and you look at the painting that Hedwig did, I mean, it's almost the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely the same.
Yeah.
It's very strange. And they were I'm sure they have never talked to each other. I mean, he was 1,000 years earlier.
Right. That's an amazing thing, and it's the same. You know, there are strange things because they're the same goals, the same creation of three-dimensionality, spatial depth, and also this. Do you know that old Dutch concept of houding?
Yeah.
Which denotes a painting where you're able to walk in between the different figures and then disappear into the horizon.
Yeah, we have a saying in China too.
Yeah.
When if you make something very nice, you could walk into it.
Yeah. Right.
And disappear.
Right. Right.
It's a very romantic saying, I think.
And it's fascinating to me because we are taught to look at these things in very strict categories. But what we're talking about here, the way of using foggy lines, sharper contrasts to create spatial depth, is the same as you find in the West. So we're talking basically about objective rules.
Yes.
Across time, across culture.
Yeah. For example, if you make it flat, you lose. You have to create space when you made those figurative paintings. It's exactly the same. I mean, those Chinese old masters, they create space. Yeah. And that's everything. When they paint a tree, a pine tree, they will highlight some part of it, and they will make the rest weaker.
Right.
And that's how they do it.
Right.
And that's the natural law. That's how we see things.
Yeah.
And that's what they did in the West. I mean, those old masters from from the West.
Right. Yeah, and I'm thinking about how, you know, with the modernism in the West, we're told this, well, there are different viewpoints and this can also be a reality and so, but as you're saying now, we're not talking about how a fly sees the world, you're talking about how the human being sees the world, right?
Yes. Yes, it is. I mean, if you try to get better and better, then you will climb up to the peak and
Right.
all the people will meet there.
Right.
I mean, all the masters, they will meet there.
Right.
There's only one highest peak
Right.
in the world.
Yeah, I remember Nerdrum said something like that when I was a student. He talks about one highest level. Not that there are people getting increasingly better, but there's one highest level, and there they just look at it like each other.
And you have the same view.
Yeah.
When you climb up to the highest peak.
Right.
Yeah.
But also at the bottom there's the same view. I mean, I've been I've been looking at some. This is so weird. The best Chinese works are like Hartwig or like Leonardo, but the worst Chinese works are also like the worst in Europe.
Yes, they start to use color. I mean, the green and red, and they start to make very big signature there.
Right.
Yes, they make big character and signature on the painting. I mean, that's...
And writing on it.
Yes, yes.
I mean, today they write fuck and stuff, but still writing on the...
Yeah, but in the past, I mean, for example, Li Cheng, he will hide his signature.
He will hide it?
Yes. You couldn't see it on his painting, right?
Right. No. No, that's...
Definitely not.
Okay, so when you get to the 19th century in Europe, with these great signatures, that's a sign of complete degeneration.
Yes, we do it too in China in the beginning of around 15th centuries. In China, they do the same thing. It's crazy.
You were before us.
Yeah. They start to make those strokes to express their feelings.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Right. They were conscious of, they really said that.
Yeah, they really said that. Exactly the same. And egocentric painting begins at that time.
When Europe is going up, China goes down.
Yeah. And it was the worst time of China in the history. It was the worst time.
In what way?
I mean, the country was ruled by the Mandarin. They came from the north, and they are not that cultured, and they learn everything from the Han, and they build their kingdoms, and they ruled the country in a really wrong way. And we go straight down to the bottom, and we have those opium wars. I mean, we lost every war. Right.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
And you know, looking at 14th century Chinese painting, as you say, there are these strong colors.
Yep.
I remember this one landscape, and the trees are, I mean, just green
and red.
and red.
They got flowers on it.
Right, and it's color on paper or on linen, or no, I'm sorry, silk.
Yeah.
And the point is, it becomes color. It's not nature anymore.
No, it's not how it is.
Yeah, and then there's this also this. I don't know enough about it, so you just correct me if I'm saying something wrong here. But it seems like they go from study of nature to then the stroke.
Yes, they start to extract their own feelings. That's what they have saying.
So the stroke shall be the feeling.
Yes, exactly.
That's so weird.
You could see it in this book. It was mentioned very clearly. Yeah. They say that they're saying at that time, I mean, in that dynasty song, it's 无我之境. 无我之境, it means that me is gone. There's no me. In my painting, there's no me.
Really?
And then when the egocentric painting begins, it's 有我之境. 有我之境, it means that me. Yeah.
That's a literal translation?
No, not me.
No, but it's very...
it means that me is there. Me is in the painting.
That's so strange.
Yes, very strange.
That's quite the exact opposite of this thing, the meeting on the highest peak and everybody are the same. I mean,
Yeah,
if you,
showing their own feelings.
yeah, and if you look at early Munch and late Rembrandt and Titian and John Constable in Europe, then you have then they look the same.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
But also, there's another thing that strikes me, that these images by Li Cheng and also his student Fan Quan,
Yeah.
they have what you would call an eternal perspective.
And they make the painting in exactly the same way, and they use the same composition, and they use the same way to depict the details.
Right. So there was no question of originality at all.
It's just like Leonardo and Raphael.
Not trying to be me.
No.
Yeah.
They have never talked about that.
Right. And the opposite of that then is when you talk about so that's the Ming period then where things go
down. Yes.
Yeah, with
it's dark.
which is Renaissance Baroque in Europe.
Yeah.
Then you go from eternally valid images to more contemporary images.
Yeah.
I think you could say that, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So China is way more earlier.
Really early about that, yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes to but there seems to be some differences as well when it comes to storytelling. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. In the West, there seems to be much stronger emphasis on Aristotle, drama, and real action going on between figures. Whereas the Chinese painting seems to be more sort of lyrical or meditative or so. Is that a fair description?
Yes, I think that's right. That's right. And I think it's because they're mostly influenced by Daoism.
Right.
Because in Daoism, we suggest people to leave the society.
Right.
Because they think that society is something will take you down.
Okay.
Yeah, you should look for the bigger powers that could help you to become smarter, to climb.
Right.
And then that's nature. And they think nature doesn't have emotion, doesn't have feeling. You could say that Tao is nature, and nature builds everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll devote some time to really understand what Taoism as such is before we get to how it influenced especially Song painting. But if we stick a little bit to differences between the West and China, there seems to be a stronger focus on the individual in the West. I mean, you mentioned Rembrandt.
Yes.
This is the face, the person sitting there, and whereas in China it's more of an emphasis on landscapes. And I remember there's this story that Alan Watts mentions, the philosopher. He was talking a lot about Daoism, about the poet in the landscape. And in China, you have this great landscape, in landscape painting, great landscape, and you have to look, and then after a while you find the poet sitting there. Whereas in European painting, the poet would be in the foreground, and then you would have some landscape behind him. And it strikes me also that there is, or I'm asking you rather, there's no real like Caravaggio or Goya in Chinese painting.
Well, we might have some of them, but it's like in Dynasty Tang,
Right.
It's way earlier, but it wasn't last long.
Right.
Then painters, they start to do those landscape painting,
Right.
and it lasts for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something very curious for me too, because obviously we could, if we go to the museum in the West, we could see those paintings full of figures in there, but we don't have those figures. Maybe we have a very small figures in that landscape, but we don't have that strong character or strong very light contract of light. We don't have that.
But how is that then in I mean, I've seen some Chinese sculpture.
Yes.
So obviously there are figures there. Do you know much about that? Is there more? I mean, is there more drama, more action going on?
Well, you will see that they are trying to reach the different kind of state of mind. It's very peaceful.
Right. Yeah.
They're sitting there peacefully. Because I think that's something very cultural, because we were taught by those philosophy like Zhuangzi and Lao Tzu. Calm. Don't pursue all those things that's around you. Right. I mean, if you see your friends have a fancy car, forget about it.
Right.
Don't. Just sit there and don't do anything with it. Yeah.
So now you mentioned the two big names within Taoist philosophy.
Yeah.
And I think we're more than ripe for getting a sort of overview of Taoism proper. So I don't know where you want to start. What is Taoism?
Well, in the very beginning, Taoism, I think it's a way of living.
Okay, so when does it start? Just to give them a sense of...
I think it's before 500 BC.
Right.
Yeah.
And Lao Tzu lived at that...
Yes, Lao Tzu was born at that time, I think.
Yeah.
And those people, those Taoism people, they start to think that the society is very evil in some point, and they have no faith in humanity.
Yeah.
And they think that we should not follow our desire.
I'm sorry, you said they had no faith
in humanity.
In humanity, okay.
Yes,
yeah.
Because they did a lot of a mess. Do not follow your desire, because it will only drive you to some chaotic situation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And but I mean, to a Westerner, that sounds very sort of easily sounds sort of totalitarian or religious, that you should deny what you really want as out of a duty, and that keeps people down. That's a typical Western perspective on this, but I guess that's not how you see it.
Yes, because I think that's when you want a fancy car, I think it's not what you really want. It's the society make you want a fancy car.
Right.
Yes. And that's not what you really want. I mean, there's something better out there. I mean, you have the whole nature there. You could study from nature. Yeah. I mean, you could get way more pleasure with nature.
Right. So it's not about really denying pleasure, but finding the best pleasure.
No, yeah. You could say it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when is Zhuangzi? Is that, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct?
Yes,
Zhuangzi. When does he live?
It's like 200 years after Lao Tzu.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
And he is the guy who pushed Taoism to the highest peak, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a very romantic guy.
Yeah.
He suggesting people to live in the woods, but I don't think he really mean that.
Right.
Because he was trying to tell you that do not be cheated by your surrounding.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Because Daoism is not actually passive, because he wants you to achieve a higher level.
Right.
He's telling you how to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's one thing I really wanted to hear you say more about. My impression when I read Tao Te Ching, which is Lao Tzu's book, is that you could, especially if you think typically sort of modern rationalistic, see Taoism as being very passive.
Yeah.
It's just sort of giving up. So what is the difference between dropping things in the society and then giving up? I mean, it's not the same thing.
No. He's telling you that there's something better. And he's telling you that the things that you are listening to or you are following is not something can guide you.
Right.
Yes. I mean, the society, was built by human. And the nature was, you could say that it's made by God.
Right.
So which one is better?
So it's talking about following internal principles.
Yes.
Or eternal values.
Yes. That's how you can be timeless. That's everything.
Yeah, that struck me. He's basically saying live in eternity.
Yes.
Don't live here and now.
No, don't live in now. Just you should reach timeless.
Yeah.
And by following the natural law, that's how you do it.
Right.
Yes. You could reach that. Maybe you're not going to live forever, but the things that you have been doing, for example, your painting could be timeless.
Right.
In that way.
So, okay. So how do you leave society? I mean, you have to live in society somehow.
Yes.
But is it a question of not letting it own you totally?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're free in your mind.
Yes. He wasn't talking about you should live in the rules like animals.
Right.
You don't. You shouldn't rule by your desire. I mean, you shouldn't rule by the society.
Right.
You should be very clear what is better for you and what to pursue. Yeah.
Right.
And what is better?
Right. How does the concept of Wu Wei come into this?
Wu Wei, it means that, for example, you could, some people, for example, those egocentric painters, they try to express their feeling.
Right.
Yes, they try to do that all the time. But you could express your feeling, but not by doing it in purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you following the nature law, then your true feelings will reveal in your paintings.
Right.
You didn't do it in purpose.
Right.
Because we always could see the melancholic quality in those old masterpieces. I mean, that's some kind of feeling too. And I think that's so real. I mean, it's real. And when you look at those painting by, those emotional painting by egocentric painters, I mean, it's just something very superficial.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Reading Path of Beauty, reading Tao Te Ching, and I was not too long ago, I talked with a modern artist. Yeah. And he was talking a lot about catharsis. And I was thinking, well, this is what we're talking about within Kitsch too. And then I thought about what he was saying, and it was all about that it was his catharsis. Because these motifs were his life, and he felt this and this when he painted it. It wasn't in the paintings, but it was sort of an exorcism for him. I guess that's the same thing you're describing here. I mean, from what I've seen in Chinese sort of art painting, it's a lot of strokes, a lot, the material becomes the important thing.
Yes.
And
yes.
you're sort of dependent on knowing the story behind it to see it as valuable.
Yeah.
Right. So it's much more similar than you would think. Also, the really good things and the really bad things are similar throughout cultures and times.
Yeah, it's very ironic that those egocentric, they say that kitsch painters, they're repeating themselves.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, those modern artists, they are the one who is repeating themselves, because
or repeating the times.
Yes, that's what they do, and they don't. I mean, as a kitsch painter, you might change. For example, I mean, last time I was there, when I saw us painting, it wasn't like this. I mean, now, I mean, this time when I come here, I realize he is becoming better and better.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's the difference.
Because you have objective qualities to work with. Yeah. Right.
He didn't repeat
and you
himself.
You as a Chinese, even though you're Chinese,
yes,
you can see this. Right.
And if I mean those modern artists, they just change the content, maybe change the way they express their feeling, but the feeling is the same.
Right.
Nothing changed.
And I think that has to do with because getting back to Daoism, leaving society. And then you have this concept of Wu Wei, which I think we should talk more about. But for now, my impression is that in general language, when people talk about my feelings, their gut feeling is more or less always an exact copy of what one thinks today, what one feels today.
Exactly.
And is this why you should leave your desires, because they are not your desires?
No.
If you are thinking contemporary, then you're just following what everybody else are doing. So that's is that a main point with Daoism?
Well, I think so. You're right. I think yes.
Right. But Wu Wei then. Could you say something more about that? Because I find it an intriguing concept. The translation I have heard, and you would know this better, is or someone have translated with non-action, and that has been criticized for sounding too passive. But then a better translation supposedly is to say that it's effortless action.
Yes, exactly. There's a story about it. There's a story about a butcher.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the story about a butcher is he's
that's Zhuangzi, right?
Yes, that's Zhuangzi. He's so good at it.
Right.
When he slaughter a cow, and he doesn't have to he doesn't have to sharpen his blade. I mean the blade. He just can do it effortless, because he knows so much about the cow. I mean the joint. I mean when you should use your power.
Yeah.
And it looks so easy for him because he learned from the nature.
Right.
Yeah. When he learned from the nature, everything becomes so natural. It's so easy.
Right.
He's becoming a smarter person.
Right.
That's what he was talking about. Wu Wei. Do not focus on. Do not focus on your knife. Do not focus on what you are doing. Right. Just try to make yourself smarter. Then everything will go through very naturally.
It's an amazing story.
Yes.
There are other stories too. There's this one. Is that Alan Watts again? I don't know where it's from, but it illustrates the same point. This man is out chopping wood, I think.
Yeah.
And he sees some kind of strange animal. He thinks, I'm going to have that for dinner. And he tries to take it, and suddenly it's behind him. And he runs after it this way, and it's there. And then he thinks, oh, I'll go this way now, because he'll show up there, and I can take him. And then the animal says to him, you think I'll show up there, so you can take me. And then in the end, he just gives up, and he's using the axe, and then the blade falls off and hits the animal and kills it.
Oh.
When he doesn't care about it anymore.
Yes. You could understand it in this way too.
But how could you translate that to painting? I mean, shouldn't you strive to learn? I mean, if you don't get a portrait working, shouldn't you really try and just strive through it and get it, make it better?
Yes, because as what you have talked about my painting, Portrait of Andres.
Yeah.
Yes, I've painted so many details without destroying the whole. I mean,
yeah.
I think that's something I have learned from Daoism.
That's fascinating.
Because sometimes you need to step back. You leave the painting. You need to step back.
Yeah. So it's not a matter of giving up.
No. You need to step back and maybe give yourself a minute, and you should look at it, and you should find a solution by learning from the nature. I mean, by looking at through observation.
Right.
I mean, not just being so into your paintings and keep doing this like this.
Yeah.
Then it would be a mess.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so this is kind of what I'm saying to my students. Then typically when they should have light, they use a lot of white. You know, because it should be lighter. And then I said, okay, come on, take it easy now. Well, step back, look at it, and compare with other things.
Exactly.
And you see you don't need that much white.
Yeah, I mean, Zhuangzi is teaching you how to paint.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the same thing that going on when you do the painting.
That's amazing. But okay, so before we talk a little bit about how it relates to other things to understand what Daoism really is, on your point about learning from nature, I mean, this is Li Cheng. It's an amazing work, and his student Fan Quan has amazing things too. But wasn't this a normal sort of student-master relationship? How did they learn?
That's normal. That's how they start as a painter.
Right.
You have to learn from the masters. I mean, you have to learn from someone who is better than you, because sometimes you just couldn't find a connection between you and the nature. I mean, that's very hard.
Yeah, but because I've seen some sort of comments and ideas about Taoism. It's just follow your own voice and do what you feel, and so. But it's not that. That's not the point.
No, he was suggesting people to find the natural law, and that's the law that have everything built. I mean, everything, the universe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's we have a saying that one, the figure one, it born everything.
It gave birth to everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you have to find that one, the figure one.
Yeah.
So, during the study, for those beginners, they really don't have the connection with the nature. Right. Maybe they couldn't find the one. So they need the master to help them to get there.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's a process. And you could never stop doing that, because if you try to do it by yourself, it could be a mess.
Yeah. So a certain guidance is okay.
Yes.
It reminds me of something also that Constable was talking about, this learning from the masters, but at a certain point you can't just do that, you have to learn from nature. And I think it was it Lysippos, Greek sculptor? He talked about the exact same thing. Nature is my master.
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
So it's not a completely different idea than the West.
No, it's completely the same, because I've seen something about Rodin has said that too.
Rodin.
Yes.
Yeah. The same thing.
Yes, because you shouldn't just look at learning from the master in the very superficial way. You should see how the master pursue the nature.
Right.
That's what you should do.
Right. And at a certain point you're able to figure out how nature works by itself.
Yeah.
Because you have the right tools to look for it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So when you talk about the nature law, I mean, going back to sort of the bird's eye view of Daoism, Daoism, you say it doesn't have morale or feelings?
Well, I think Dao, the word Dao, is very similar to God in the West. I mean, in the West...
But it's not a religion.
No, it's not a religion. I mean, in the West, I have heard that God have built everything, you see. So, Dao is something very similar. But
it's not someone who punishes or favors people?
No, I mean Daoism, obviously those philosophers, they didn't personalize Dao. They humanize.
Yeah.
They didn't humanize Dao.
No.
They say that it's something, it's just there.
Because it's translated into English as the way.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a proper translation, but maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my feeling is, my sensation from having read what I've read is that the Tao is just the way nature works.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You can't pray to Tao and Tao will help you.
No.
Whatever. I mean, there's no mercy or cruelty at all. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's very. I think that's why, for example, Li Cheng was influenced by Daoism.
Yeah.
And he makes something exactly like Hartwig did.
Yeah.
Because Daoism is, according to Zhuangzi Daoism, Dao is everywhere.
Right.
It's the way.
Yeah.
You don't have to pray for God or something, Dao God or something to get Dao.
Yeah.
You just learn from the nature.
Right.
Then you could be a Daoism person.
It's an extremely powerful way of thinking.
Yeah. You don't have to.
Right.
Yes, it's everywhere because...
And it's a completely different thing than that. The problem with as opposed to Daoism, the problem with religion, I mean Christianity, this is something I read in Hermann Brock about kitsch, and he quotes I guess that's Luther, who's saying that a good, very short, a good work doesn't create a good man, but a good man creates a good work. And by that he means that if you are a true believer, then what you create will be good, regardless of the quality of the painting itself. And that's a completely different way of thinking. I mean, Daoism says there's no reward or punishment or anything like that. There is you and your ability to study nature. And whether you're a painter or a scientist, I guess, or whatever.
No.
Right. But how then does Daoism relate to, for example, Confucianism?
Well, I think Confucianism is something teaching people how to survive in the society, how to climb up to the top of the society.
Right. So
that's something completely opposite, I think, in my opinion.
So that's more for conceptual artists in the West,
yes,
and figurative painters in the China.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's very interesting because they're from the same time. It's just like Aristotle and Plato.
That's amazing. Because they are more or less.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I mean, Confucius and Lao Tzu is just like Aristotle and Plato.
So Plato would be Confucius.
Yes.
Yeah, because Plato is very clear on a very dictatorial state.
Yes.
Right. It also reminds me of this 19th century European philosopher Hegel, because he is very concerned with time and different periods, and when you're finished with one period, you shut the door and you progress. And your duty is to follow that progress and help that progress. So it's a very sort of state philosophy in a way. And it seems like what you're saying is that Confucianism is exactly the same.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. And how does it relate to Stoicism, for example?
Well, I think
that should be more similar.
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, in the way of living, when it comes to the way of living, is very similar. But Daoism, they discuss the universe. I mean, they have discussion about the universe. They will discuss how the universe was born.
Born.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Was born, but I don't have much study about Stoicism.
No, right.
From what I know is the suggestion for the way of living is very similar.
Yeah, and you know, I've read Epictetus and also that Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius, and basically they're talking about peace of mind, ataraxia. And I remember reading in the foreword to Marcus Aurelius that this should not be confused with apatheia, apathy. So it seems like there's a similar problem. It might seem as a problem with Stoicism that it says to you, oh, just be passive and accept whatever happens to you. But that's not the point. Epictetus talks about how you should be aware of what you can control and what you cannot control, and not spend time on the things you do not control, because that's just, I mean, that would be the same as the butcher trying to go exactly against the bone all the time and not in the joints, right? Yeah. So for example, if you're 50 years old and you think, oh, I should be 20 again, and you use a lot of energy being sad about that, that's obviously not something you can do something with. But of course, it's not saying that if there's a little resistance, just give up, because there might be a path. It might be difficult, but it might be possible for you to do something about it. And I think that's a clear similarity, and it also seems to me to be a similarity with what you can read about Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, there are several instances where he is very clear about do not respect the authorities of your time. You should relate to, you should be able to live in an eternal perspective.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, for example, Zhuangzi, he doesn't want you to listen to him. He wants you to listen to the nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good idea of knowing if someone is a good guy or not, if they say that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Because he always suggests there's a bigger power there.
Right. And he just wants to guide you in that direction.
He will guide you, yes.
So, but then there's another thing here that struck me reading Lao Tzu. You could understand Daoism as the true friend of conceptual art, where you should, there are things in there that sounds very similar as to that modern art way of thinking with a genius, just follow your inner voice and let that come out through your hands.
Well, that's definitely not.
Definitely not.
Not, because he was trying to tell you that just let go something that you could not control.
Right.
But you should pursue something. You should be a smarter people. You should climb up. I mean, spiritually.
Yeah.
And I mean, how could you do that?
Yeah.
And then Zhuangzi said that very clearly. You should follow the nature. That's how you do it. Right. Because the nature is smarter than you.
Right.
Yeah. It's a bigger power, and you can learn a lot of things from it.
Yeah.
When you study with it, and you become you will be different.
Yeah.
For example, you will be different than yesterday.
Right.
Because you will be more knowledgeable than yesterday. That's how you make the change.
That's fascinating. It reminds me of something that Constable said. Going out to paint, he said, that was after having studied Royston and these others. He said, you should never go out into nature with a preconception of how to compose, because nature can compose much better than you.
Well,
Well, it seems similar. I mean, if you are ready to really look at nature,
yeah.
then you will see a composition in your motif.
Well, they're not talking about you should give up nature.
No.
I mean, that's a big difference, I think.
No. But I mean, he was talking about giving up or forgetting what you've studied in the old masters, and just look at what nature tells you.
Well, I think the master is the star.
Right.
It's a star. It helps you how to understand the nature more.
Right. Right.
Because that's what they do.
Yeah.
In the past in China.
Right. Yeah. So, is Daoism a friend of Kitsch then?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
How so?
Because he has great respect for the nature, and you could see those people who was influenced by Daoism. It's very obviously they paint the same way as the Kitsch painters did. Yeah, I think that's the biggest proof.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's also, I mean, I mentioned Aristotle as someone typically more, that was sort of the basis for Western painting, and literature and different things too. But this is also quite Aristotelian. The emphasis on empiricism. You have to study nature, not put your feelings first, but the study of nature first.
Yeah, they deny egocentric.
Yeah.
That's the key point, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Daoism, it denied egocentric.
Yeah.
And he's suggesting those painters to be timeless.
Right. And then we get to the similarity between Daoism and this idea of the levels of egocentrism, geocentrism, and heliocentrism.
Yeah.
You said something to me about Zhuangzi.
Yeah, he has said something very interesting. He have categorized different kind of people.
Right.
The first kind of people are those who have very little knowledge about anything.
Right.
And the second level is the people who has knowledge about certain things on this earth. For example, he knows this is a chair. No, I'm sorry, this is a table.
Right.
And this is a chair. And when he look at horses, and he could tell this is a horse. But when the next level is, he could know how everything was built.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that's this whole idea of geocentrism that's typically your naturalist or realist. He stands here and paints what is there.
Yeah, exactly.
But then when you come to the heliocentric perspective, you don't leave empiricism, but you see the earth as from outer space. You see the totality of the whole human existence. And this is what Li Cheng does.
You master your knowledge.
Yeah.
You master your knowledge. You could use everything that you know in your painting, because when you look at his painting, I'm sure that he didn't paint exactly what he had seen through his eyes.
Right.
He changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because he knows he could do it so good, because he knows how the mountains should just climb high up, and how the trees grow.
Right.
He knows.
So when you're inspired by Taoist philosophy as a painter, it doesn't make you a naturalist.
No.
Because you're trying to find sort of the natural law.
Yeah, because we have a saying that between among those Chinese painters, they say that if you try to paint something exactly like what you have seen through your eyes, you are flattering the audience.
Right.
If you try to paint something, like for example, abstract painting, then you are cheating those people.
Right.
So I think that's the point. You have to find the spiritual part of it.
Right. Yeah, and this is the thing that Li Cheng
Li Cheng
writes about how they would differ in the time of Li Cheng, differ between what's the concept between representation and capturing the true spirit.
Yes. In order to capture the true spirit, you have to be extremely knowledgeable.
Right.
It means that you need to have contact with the nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need a lot of work. You need to work a lot to achieve that.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you have to study from the masters, and then you go to the nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the process, I think.
And then, we'll talk a little bit about that too. How Li Cheng and Hartwig are more or less twin souls. And when you talk about how Li Cheng this is not a naturalistic portrait of that specific area.
No.
I mean, they don't know really where he painted.
No. Of course not.
Right. It reminds me of what Hartwig did with the Bork Island, where you have this mountain there in the fog, or with the clouds coming over. And we went and looked at the actual Bork Island. So instead of being shaped like this,
yeah,
there was a whole side to the mountain that he had just removed.
Yes, I mean, from what I know, Li Cheng, he finished those landscape painting in their home.
Yeah.
Yes, so it means that he couldn't just keep looking at what he have seen.
Right.
He couldn't do that things that like the naturalism do.
Yeah.
He need to change. I mean, he need to compose the whole painting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things he might change.
Yeah. And then we're going back to what you said about Tao not being a god, not being judging or helping you or anyway, it's just a nature force. And I think if you think like that, it reminds me of what Nietzsche was talking about. He said that when people can reach a state where they no longer strive for reward or fear punishment, that will be like a rainbow after a long storm.
Yeah, that's a beautiful.
Yeah. And it's the same point.
Yes.
As far as I understand. And I was just thinking, to put words in your mouth, do you think that understanding that Tao is not judgmental in any way, sort of just releases you from all these attachments so that you can be it's easier for you to think heliocentric? Yes,
Zhuangzi has said something very similar.
Yeah.
When he said that when he let go everything, let go, it's just the let go of society. It means that he no longer pursuing reward, or he's not going to get any punishment.
Right.
And then he becomes some kind of animal. When he touched the water, he become a big fish. When he fly into the sky, he becomes a big bird. It's a very romantic story there.
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic image.
It's called Kunlun. He becomes that kind of animal. It was he imagined it.
Yeah, and that's also a thing. I remember, on a side note, I remember talking to a student who was at Bork Nerdrum's farm once, David Ransom, and I never forget that he talked about what do you call those? They were trying to make gold. What's the concept? anyways, in their hermetic writing, sort of secret writings, they would say that, okay, here's a recipe of how to create gold. And one thing was about drinking something very poisonous. And there were some people who took that literally. And of course they died. So I think with any kind of intelligent philosophy, like Daoism, you cannot just say, okay, I should move to a hut in the forest. You have to say, think what is he actually saying. It's a state of mind and not doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it also is very similar to me. Okay, so when you get into a sort of a heliocentric way of thinking, that is also quite similar to what Aristotle is talking about. He's saying, making things worse than they are, that's comedy. As they are, that's fine, but it's not so interesting. But making them better than they are, that's the goal you should pursue.
Yes.
So there are very strong similarities, though they might not appear similar, Chinese and classical Western painting.
I mean, it seems that, melancholic is the destination. When they all follow the nature law and they all, I'm sure that Li Cheng, he didn't paint this, in purpose to make it melancholic, but the result is
melancholy.
Yes, it will look melancholic.
By nature law, you get to that if you really study.
Yes, if you study it, because for example, I was told several times that my portraits are very, they have a sad-looking face.
Right.
It's very melancholic, but to be honest, I didn't mean to do it in that way.
Yeah.
I was just being conscious and I was just being logical. I tried to make it better.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
And eventually it turned out the portrait becomes very melancholic.
Yeah. I think that's why I love my wife. She doesn't like humor. No, but then there's some kind of security there. And it's a fascinating concept. When you study things really thoroughly, you get to melancholy.
Maybe that's how it was. Everything was built.
Yeah. By careful study. And it reminds me of something. We had on the last program, we had Wilhelm Heimdall sitting in that chair, and that was a fantastic interview. And he talked about, or we talked about Don Rosa, the American cartoonist. And when I looked at Don Rosa, he says quite often that when people really admire him, he thinks it's a bit strange because he was only concerned with making a good story. And that was his goal. So he wasn't trying to reach that, being famous or being liked or so, but he was just trying to do good work.
Yeah.
And it seems very similar. This is that's also what I want to talk to you about. This thing, if I've understood Daoism correctly, this thing about the best thing is not to try. It seems very strange, and that's, I guess, is what could sound sort of modern arty. Forget about training and doing handcraft or so. Just do whatever you want. But can you explain that? Is that connected with Wu Wei?
Yes. Don't try, just follow.
Yeah.
Don't try. Don't try to do anything that in purpose. And you follow the nature.
Yeah.
And I think the nature, eventually, it will reward you something.
Right. It's also what you do with children. If you want them to not
course.
Scream so much, you don't say, don't scream.
And for example, if you want to educate your son, you don't go to the bookstore and buy a book that tell you how to educate children. You just have to be a good father. Good people. Be a good people, good person. And I think your son will.
You just destroy the whole market for children educating.
Yes, I think that your son is going to. He will naturally imitate you.
Right.
That's how it is. That's how nature is.
Right.
For example, if you are a very bad person
Yeah.
and you tell your son, "Oh, no, don't do this, don't do that,"
Yeah.
and that's not true, because it's not something from your heart.
Okay, so Daoism is not. I mean, it helps you quite personally as well.
Yes.
It's not just a quick fix book for painters.
No, it helps. I mean, it helps everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially this thing that you mentioned about, okay, if your friend has a nice car, well, that's his car.
It's fine.
Forget about it.
Yeah. Because people get influenced by whatever you are surrounding.
Yeah.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Then you might change your mind, because maybe today I want to be a great figurative painters, but you are poor. You don't have money. You see that those guy who is working with those modern art gallery, they makes a lot of money. They buy their own fancy car. Then you might change.
Right. Yeah.
You might change.
Right.
That's something you shouldn't follow. It's your desire.
I see this immediate desire, or you should understand there's a greater desire for you. Right. Okay. How does this fit in? There's thing about the manipulation of perspective.
Yes. They will guide your side. I mean, guide your view.
But why would they do that? How could Daoism, study nature, lead to manipulating nature?
Because he became the master of it.
Right.
When he studied from nature, he got the knowledge.
Yeah.
Then he could use it freely, effortlessly.
Right.
That's how it is.
Well, it's like
if you're not knowledgeable enough, I mean, things could be very awkward.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. So this manipulation of perspective that we've been talking about is just fascinating, and this is exactly what Li Cheng is doing here, and the same thing that Hartwig is doing in the Bork Island. Can you say a little bit about this thing, about inverting the perspective?
Well, it's obvious when you're looking at these pictures. You can see that how he was how he make the mountains. I mean, the down part of the mountain weaker.
Yeah, or lighter in the valley.
Yes,
yeah.
Lighter.
Yeah.
And then it creates space.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you look at those mountains, I mean, in person, it doesn't look like this.
No.
And you could see that all those details in the from sea, from view.
Yeah, in the foreground.
Yes, and you could see a lot of things there.
Yeah.
And in this way, it creates space too.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And there are several. This also you see that in Leonardo.
Yeah.
The different angles. And in the Bork Island, it's of course a different motif, but there are surprising similarities in the effect. Where that in the foreground, you have the typical Renaissance perspective going like this.
Oh yeah.
But then the Bork Island, the perspective is the other way. I mean, I remember Bork Nerdrum was talking about how the painting sees you. Instead of you going into the painting comes out to you.
Yes.
And that's what it does. I mean, in the foreground, it goes inwards. And then in the upper part of the painting with the Bork Island, it goes out like this.
You got a feeling like that too. You could see the mountain is going out.
Yeah.
It's coming out to you.
It's so weird.
It's so weird. And you could still see those some secret small landscape here.
Yes, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that Hartwig does.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, in the Bork Island, you go to the bottom right corner there.
Yeah, exactly.
Bottom right corner here too, and you can hold over the last little the angle there, or the little corner there, and then suddenly you get a new heaven, a horizon, and some it may seem like a farm or something like that, and it's hidden in the totality of the whole.
Yeah, exactly. If
whole
you
work.
cut this part out of these
Yeah.
pictures,
Yeah.
it becomes a whole new landscape.
Yeah, but they both managed to do that without it being blah 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 blah,
No,
lot of
no.
talking. It's an amazing
That's
thing.
amazing.
And it's so far away from naturalism.
Yeah.
Okay, so if this is something you can reach through Daoism, the philosophy of Daoism, is this, to talk in very art historical terms, is this still valid today? How can it help a figurative painter today?
Well, first, as what we have talked about, for example, Zhuangzi was saying that you should leave the society. You should live in the woods like animals. I mean, it's just a metaphor.
Right.
Yeah. What he was trying to say is, you should leave those things that's meaningless things. I mean, meaningless things.
Yeah.
You should You should leave those superficial things and find the spiritual part of it, of the things that you're facing.
Right.
Yeah. For example, when I was in France, I mean, I applied for the art academy in Strasbourg, and then the professor told me that you were too traditional for us.
Right.
Then when I confronted that, and I have two choices. Maybe I could change to adapt them. I could change to become a modern artist.
Right.
But I didn't, because I don't really like anything that's going on there.
And why didn't you not change?
And I think that's something. What Zhuangzi have been talking about. You should leave.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing that you should leave.
Right.
Well, that's my decision.
Is that what is meant with the metaphor of water, to be like water?
Yeah, we have a saying like to be water, but it's like to be water is like you need to be flexible enough.
Yeah.
To be everything. Water
Right.
could crush the stone and you could flow.
Right.
So
it's not about being meek and weak and
no.
It's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
And that's what you're suggesting then for young figurative painters, or for any figurative painter today.
Yes, of course. You should always try to look for those things which is timeless.
Right.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
That's perfect.
Yeah, if you listen to the things, if you listen to the society, I mean, they're always trying to tell you what to do.
Right.
They have rules, boundaries, limitation. And if you listen to them, I think that's a waste of life. Because we are supposed to pursue something more valuable.
Right.
And I think that's what we should do. Yeah.
And that's what you get with reading about Dao.
Yes. Yes.
That's perfect. Cheng Wu, thank you for coming to the Cave of Apelles. And thank you for watching. Remember, you can support our channel at caveofapelles.com. I'll see you next month.